Welcome to The Drive with your automotive experts and hosts, Lauren Fix and Karl Brauer. Each week we deliver the latest breaking news, vehicle reviews, and inside look at what's happening in the automotive world. Buckle up. It's time to hit the road with The Drive.
Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl. I'm Karl Brauer, and
I'm Lauren Fix. Welcome to the show.
yes, here we are. And we have got an exciting show today because we have an exciting guest with a very interesting history and past and present, and he's done some great things recently. So let's get into it. That is Henry Payne, the one and only Henry Payne. If you are from the Detroit area, or if you read a lot of the national newspapers, or if you like cartoons about cars, you might have already seen or heard his name. But Henry Payne is with us today. And Henry, welcome to The Drive with Lauren and Karl.
Karl, great to be with you. Thanks for having me. Good to see you, Lauren.
Good to see you.
Great to have you on, Henry. Let's start out with some background. I know you have worked for the Detroit News for many years, and I know you've got a history of racing cars and also owning some fairly interesting cars and a wide spectrum of cars, not just the traditional ones that a lot of car enthusiasts have, but some newer non-traditional enthusiast cars. But why don't you give us a quick rundown on kind of your high points of what you've done and what's gotten you here today?
Yeah, it's nice to be covering cars in this industry because I grew up at the racetrack. My father was a racer. I've been at racetracks since I was a kid. Raced go-karts when I was young. So it's a nice full circle for a career. But I actually started in journalism. Came out of Princeton University, which had no journalism program. But I worked for a couple of newspapers when I was up at Princeton, and really loved the industry. Loved writing, loved cartooning. I'd always drawn as a kid, as a young cartoonist. So I came out of Princeton, no J school like Columbia, for example, and got thrown into the deep end of journalism as a cartoonist in Washington D.C. and just gradually grew my resume from there. I started writing when I was in D.C. I got syndicated as a topical editorial cartoonist, and then ultimately came to Detroit 25 years ago. Great town, great place to cover not only politics on the cartoon side, but to also write about the industry, which is really such an intersection of a lot of public policy. So ultimately, I became the Detroit News auto columnist. I'm still a syndicated cartoonist with Andrews McNeil out in Kansas City, and I also do a radio show. So I keep busy.
It's so funny because I've actually known you a long time because your father started SBRA. We'll talk about that in a little bit, the Sports Car Vintage Racing Association. And my first sort of connection to you, realizing we actually knew each other, was we were standing next to each other at the Peterson Museum looking at a Mustang. It was a Mustang matchback like mine that I used to race. And I said, "Oh, I had a car like that." And you were standing next to me and you said, "You did? In what series?" And I said, "SVRA." And I looked at you and went, "Oh my gosh, you're Henry Payne. I know your dad." And it was sort of weird that we actually knew each other for years, but didn't put it together because we're both North American Car and Truck of the Year jurors like Karl. And it was kind of neat to put this all together because now we see you all the time.
Yeah, yeah, it's neat. It's a small world. The racing world is very small, as you know, Lauren. And yeah, it was neat to get to know you in a professional as well as a racing context. And Karl and I, of course, hit it right off because we love all things related to speed. So yeah, it's really a nice, like I say, racing is a nice intersection of athletics, of public policy, and of just a passion for automobiles. And you meet a lot of neat people in this business.
That's for sure. And you just got an opportunity to go to Tokyo. And that's one of the first things we want to discuss is the used to be called the Tokyo Motor Show. It's now called what? Tokyo Mobility Show. Is that what they're calling it now?
Japan Mobility Show, I think that's what
Right. In Tokyo, at the Tokyo Big Site, which is their big convention center.
touch on the silliness of these show names. It's not LA Auto Show anymore, it's Automobility. I can't remember even what the Detroit show is called
They
now.
don't call it auto shows anymore at all. When we were kids, we'd go to the auto show with our parents and sit in every car. And as car enthusiasts, the three of us are, we'd go, "Oh, I've always wanted that Mustang, that Corvette, that whatever that our parents didn't buy."
Yeah, but it was just like I always feel like, people throw away name and brand equity too easily, I could tell a story about Infinity models and, what happened with that brand when they renamed all of them at Kelley Blue Book and all the traffic, what happened to that brand. But anyways, well, Henry, we're gonna jump into more of what you saw at the Japan Mobility Show in Tokyo, that I say with such reverence now, as you can see here and see. But we're going to jump into that really quick after we take a quick break and pay some bills. We're going to come back and talk about that. Maybe talk a little more about some of the cars you've owned and some of the racing experiences you've had as well. So we will be right back with The Drive with Lauren and Karl.
Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl. This segment brought to you by Issy, really Issy. Winter roads, no problems. Get instant traction with Issy tire socks, the clean, easy alternative to chains. Like a sock, easy to install, and it's available at Amazon and Walmart. You should have a pair in your trunk. Issy tire socks, that's ISSE, really Issy. Okay, Henry, we are so excited to have you because you just came back from Tokyo. Tell us about the show and what you saw, because there was a lot of cool products.
Well, and it's interesting too, Lauren and Carl, because when you go abroad and you go to a show in Japan, say, you realize how local all these markets are. When you're in the United States is the is the richest economy in the world. Everybody wants to play in the United States. You go to Japan, you go to Europe, and you realize these are more regional markets. They're very different than the United States. It's a little surreal for me, where my grandfather fought on Okinawa in World War II, and here we are 2 generations later, and I am going to Japan as a guest of Honda, which sells 40% of its product in the United States now. It only sells 16% of its product in Japan.
Really?
Tell that to my grandfather, who was on Okinawa in World War II, and it'd be stunning to him. But as you realize when you're in Japan, how much the United States means to brands like Toyota, Honda, Subaru. 70% of Subaru's product is sold in the United States.
Wow.
So the United States is enormously important to these brands, and so the Tokyo Auto Show is not so important to U.S. brands. In fact, it's rare to see a U.S. brand in the Japanese market. Part of that is because it's only a 4 million sales unit market as opposed to our 17 million unit market, or what's China up to now, 30 million units. So it's a small export market for the United States, and it's a different market. When you're on the streets in Tokyo, which is 30% of Japan's population, when you're on the streets in Tokyo, you see a lot of K cars. You have never seen a K car in the United States. And again, that's because the Japanese economy is a regional economy. The Japanese are totally dependent on foreign energy, on foreign oil. And so after World War II, they created a car segment called the K car segment. And it's these little boxy vehicles, subcompact size vehicles. They would not do well in the U.S. market. Uh, they run on tiny 3-cylinder engines, 60 horsepower engines, and the reason is because the Japanese government, wants to have an economical car for people that doesn't use a lot of oil, so they aren't terribly dependent on foreign markets. 80% of Honda's volume in Japan is a K car. You've never seen this car in the United States. You don't see Civics, you don't see CRVs, you certainly don't see Passports and Pilots, which are made in the United States only with left-hand drive. So you don't see most of the Japanese Honda product that you see in the United States. And that's another reason that the U.S. manufacturers don't sell in Japan, is they don't want to make K cars. It would be a very specific market for them. And so they don't want to put the capital in. So it's interesting going to the Tokyo show. It's a nice show, but it's a has a very regional vibe to it. Just like going to Los Angeles today, or going to especially Detroit. It's dominated by Japanese automakers.
That's interesting. I guess you wouldn't think that. I mean, I know about the K cars and how cool they are because I've been to Europe, like Carl and I have as well. But I think it's interesting to see that 40% of their market for Honda is sold here. So where is the other 60%? Obviously, you said 16 is in Japan, but where is the rest of it sold?
Yeah, they're selling around. They're selling in Europe a little bit, selling in South America quite a bit. South America is a good market for Honda. They sell in Australia. So, you piece it together, but the US by far is the biggest percentage market for them at 40%. And the US customer is so wealthy. The US middle class is so wealthy compared to the rest of the world that you can sell a variety of cars there. You can sell them at margin. You can take a Honda Civic. Again, I did not see a Honda Civic when I was in Tokyo. You go to the United States and they're selling a Honda Civic, a Honda Civic Si, a Honda Civic Type R, and a Honda Prelude, all off the Civic chassis. It just shows you the how much wealth there is in the U.S. market. And the other thing that's really interesting about Japan and is silly about the attempt in the United States by the Democratic Party to socialize the U.S. auto industry is even though the Japanese market is totally dependent on foreign sources for energy, they are not mandating electric vehicles. I think Japan, like saner voices in the United States, realize that mandating EVs means Chinese dependence. And if you're in the Pacific Rim and you're Japan, you do not want to be dependent on China for your materials, for your raw materials. There are no EV mandates in Japan. Their electric vehicle take in that market is very low, lower than it is even in the United States. Um, it's a very, very urban environment. So you have a lot of people in apartments where charging EVs doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's just not as wealthy a population as the United States. It has half the per capita income. Per capita income in the United States is the highest in the world at 60,000. The Japanese per capita income is good. It's a top 10 economy, but it's $30,000 per capita income. So for EVs, which are really a luxury buy in the United States, you do not see many of them in Japan.
Wow, you would not think that. I mean, considering like VinFast has been really trying very hard to push the electric vehicle in China as well, that Japan's just not taking it. And I think Carl's discussed that before about electric cars here in the US. It's just the interest for it is not great.
Yeah, no, it's tough to sell here. Well, we're going to take a quick break and jump back in. We're going to pay some bills, but this is fascinating stuff, Henry. Thank you for the kind of snapshot of what's going on in Japan. We will be right back after a short break with The Drive with Lauren and Karl. Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl. We are talking with Henry Payne, and this segment is brought to you by IC Cars, your number one stop for car information and car shopping. It's a great internet search engine if you're looking for car listings, but also if you're looking for guidance on what's happening in the auto industry. I'm the executive analyst there, and we do a lot of data crunching to figure out what the trends are and what you should be looking at. Yeah, speaking of like the U.S. market, I should say, Henry, and you were just talking about how Japan's market is so different from ours on a lot of levels, including the per capita income, which reduces the buying power of Japanese car consumers. And that's why they buy these smaller cars, and they couldn't buy a lot of the cars that are sold in this country. But in this country, we're starting to have a problem with affordability as well. I think we'd all agree. And it's driven by a lot of factors. But the cost of producing cars is really gone up a lot in the last 20 years. It used to be $20,000 for the average new car as recently as 2000. And now it's over twice that. We've hit 50,000. So that's a real increase. And one of the factors I believe in there, among many, is the cost of humans assembling these cars. And labor unions, which, fight for consumer rights and worker rights and making sure they're properly paid, but they also raise the cost of making cars in this country. And there's been battles between, which plants will be unionized. A lot of them in the Detroit Midwest area are. A lot of the ones in the South are not. That's why a lot of the foreign companies are building in the South. I think they want to avoid the costs that are related to unions. But we've seen relatively recently, a piercing out of the kind of Midwest traditional labor union stronghold and into one of the foreign automakers that's considered the South. I don't know if you really consider Tennessee South, right? But, they've gone into that area, and you know more about this in that Volkswagen plant. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about that, Henry?
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. I mean, one of the real competitive advantages that the transplant automakers from Japan and from Europe have in the United States is all of their plants are non-union. And Carl, you think of the importance of that today. It's not so much the pay scales because the UAW contracts tend to set the pay scale. And if you're an auto manufacturer, VW in Tennessee or Honda in Ohio or Toyota in Kentucky, you want your workers to be competitive with those pay scales. So it's not so much pay scale. You'll find that the pay scales of the non-union automakers in these right to work states are pretty competitive with UAW wages. What's important is flexibility because when you unionize a plant, you bring in a lot of union rules that reduces it's a second management layer in a plant, right? You're basically bringing in the rules of the union that make the manufacturing business flexible. And if you're a manufacturer, man, you want to be flexible. I mean, markets change, products change, consumer trends change. You want to be flexible. And so you've seen, for example, Honda making a small car like the Civic in Ohio, in Indiana, because they can be flexible in making that car in the same line with an Accord or with a CRV, depending on their consumer tastes. Look at General Motors, which tried to make the Chevy Cruze in Ohio, couldn't do it. They had to move it to Mexico. They just could not make a car of that size in the U.S. market. And so that's always been an advantage for the transplant automakers in the United States. Well, you can see why the United Auto Workers would want to unionize all these transplants. They're about half of U.S. manufacturing employment in the United States these days. That's where all the growth has been in the U.S. workforce. And so the UAW has targeted particularly VW because Volkswagen has a history of unionization in Europe. Unions are on boards in Europe. They can put pressure on the executive management. So there's been a heavy concentration on unionizing VW in particular, and they're successful last year in 2024. And a big piece that had changed in the U.S. market was electrification. And to your point, Carl, electrification has not just changed the price point of automobiles. They've gone from $35,000 to $50,000 average price just in the last 10 years. A lot of that is because of EVs, because auto manufacturers can't make money on EVs. They have to build that margin into their gas vehicles. And so you've seen the average price of a vehicle go up. But the other equation is it's brought the government in to these plants. It's brought the government in mandating their vehicle mix. And so the manufacturers go back to the government and say, okay, if you're going to regulate our vehicle mix, you got to give us money. You got to give us subsidies, give us money to expand our plants, our battery plants, give us tax credits, $7,500 tax credits to sell these EVs to the customers. And so when you with that regulatory change, you have automakers with more leverage, or I'm sorry, government with more leverage on automakers than you've ever seen. So this time, when the UAW came into the VW Chattanooga plant to unionize, you had 33 senators who wrote a letter to VW and other transplants. 33 U.S. Democratic senators. That's a powerful group of people in Washington, D.C. with a lot of regulatory power. And they said to VW and these other transplants, it'd be nice if you guys would let the union into your shop if you still want that $7,500 tax credit to sell your EVs, if you still want that $200 million subsidy to build an EV battery plant. So for the first time,
Yeah, so all right, this is interesting and not really not
And there's
this
more
surprising
to
to
it.
hear that. Yeah, and there's more to it. So we're going to take a quick break, but you're getting us right at the kind of important crux of the information here, Henry. So we're going to come back after a quick break, and I want you to finish this story because this is exactly the kind of thing that's going on and people need to know about. We'll be right back after this break with Lauren and Carl.
Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl. Our special guest this week is Henry Payne. Henry was in the middle of telling us something really, really exciting. So if you missed it, don't forget to check out our YouTube channel, The Drive Car Show, and you can rewatch the whole thing. Henry, tell us what happened with the unions and Volkswagen in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and the impact to consumers and how the politicians are involved.
Yeah.
So, third bite at the apple for the UAW trying to unionize a VW plant in the United States. This time, VW is getting a lot of subsidies from the United States government, both to build battery plants and to sell its vehicles to U.S. consumers, things like $7,500 federal tax breaks. So the union comes in to unionize the Chattanooga plant, and the VW gets a letter from 33 Democratic senators saying, you might want to sit this union campaign out because there's a lot of money on the line. Don't forget all that money that's on the line coming from Washington subsidies. So for the first time, the VW corporate did not enter into the make a lobbying effort with his employees. The union had run of the plant, made its case, but unlike the previous two campaigns, VW did not counter that. They did not say these are the benefits that you'll lose as an employee. These are the advantages the plant will lose. They didn't make an argument against unionization. And the UAW, for the first time in the United States, unionized a U.S. transplant. So Chattanooga is the first plant in the United States to have the UAW in its workplace.
Did I not just read somewhere, maybe in your paper, that they're talking about going on strike? That was something I
Right.
thought that was interesting. First, they want the unions because they think they're going to make more money. They're not making more money, but now they're going to put more pressure on Volkswagen, who's hurting financially on a global basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is the first time that VW is now facing that issue in its plants. Obviously, the Detroit Three have faced that for decades. But that's an issue. Once you unionize these plants, there's a strike issue. There's been some reporting too that the employees are not real happy with the union management. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. It'll be interesting to see the if the plant votes to deunionize. I mean, that's never happened before either. So yeah, there's a lot in play, but it shows you the complications when you bring in a second management tier with the union into a manufacturing plant.
Oh, and also the
Interesting. Sorry, Karl. Go ahead.
I was just going to say also the complications of having not just unions trying to promote their role or their position in a plant, but leadership at automakers and leadership in the government. And so it's now no longer just employees analyzing the benefits and costs and the what gets better and what gets worse with the union, but these other factors at play. I
Well, and a really interesting parallel to that, Karl, is you go to Honda in Ohio, and a lot of these automakers, this is a very difficult time for them. They're dealing with tariffs. They've got to look at their plant capacity and where they're going to manufacture goods depending on tariffs. The federal mandates have gone away for EVs, so now they're not compelled to make a certain percentage of their products. So they really need to be flexible in their workplaces. And you go into a plant like Honda in Ohio, north of Columbus, and they're tearing out their assembly lines. They're building really flexible assembly lines so they can bring in product depending on these government policies, tariffs, no tariffs, EV mandate, no EV mandate. That's really hard to do in a union plant where you have so many work rules and where you have contracts that have committed certain products going to a plant. you see the kind of flexibility that a non-union automaker needs in a place like Honda's Ohio plant.
And specifically, like with Volkswagen, if they're being told, or if those union plants and agreements are like, we're going to build a certain amount of EVs, and then all of a sudden the EV incentive goes away, as it already has, and the EV momentum and growth in the marketplace shrinks, and it's already dropped down to 5% from, around 8% last month, and it's going to keep dropping. And yet there's all these contracts because the unionization at that Chattanooga plant that says, we will be building a certain amount of EVs. That's part of our agreement. That's exactly the crux of what you're talking about. They've lost the flexibility because of the unionization. And now when the world turns, and it does that every once in a while, as we all know, they can't react, and they can't adapt, and they can't pivot the way they need to. I'm sorry, Lauren, go ahead. I think you wanted to say something.
No, I was just going to say, remember that Volkswagen kind of did this to themselves. They overpromised and underdelivered on diesel, and I own a diesel Volkswagen product. Shall we say Volkswagen Group product? And it was a great product. And then when they lied to the EPA and everyone else and got caught, they forced themselves into an all-electric product because that was their promise in order to not have additional gigantic penalties. So now they're in a very interesting catch-22 because the consumers don't want it, and then they're going to, what do they do now? And I always wonder, what happens with these plants? We do know for a fact, though, there will not be an electric vehicle mandate coming back in the future because of the Congressional Review Act. So I don't see that there's any way for that to come back. I've covered that on my channel about how it could come back. It would be almost impossible. So even though politicians put pressure on Volkswagen, interesting that they accepted that, Henry, that they actually said, yeah, we'll listen to what 33 Democratic politicians said.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I mean, as manufacturers in a tough spot. They're trying to make a product that's the most complicated consumer product on the planet. I mean, cars are just extraordinary things. Bringing together not only rubber and steel together, but also electronics and leather materials. It's just an extraordinary thing to see an automobile to go together. And then you get the government that comes in and says, "Oh, by the way, we're going to mandate that 35% of your product be electric by 2026." I mean, it's, how do you satisfy the government mandate on the one hand and the consumer desire on the other? It's a tough business.
It is. You just go authoritarian, we just got to be like China. I get so sick of people saying, well, we're not competing with China. And it's like, yeah. And you better thank your lucky stars we aren't. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and we're going to be right back with The Drive and with Lauren and Karl and with Henry Payne, because we've got some great topics still to cover on this show. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Karl. This segment is brought to you by Car Coach Reports. That's my channel. And if you're thinking about buying a car, or maybe you just want the truth about the latest models and what's going on in the automotive industry, check out on YouTube Car Coach Reports. I'll give you the unfiltered truth. You'll get an insider's perspective on a wide range of automotive topics in a fun, fast segment put out 3 times a week. Okay, Henry, we want to talk to you about some other cool things you do that no one else in the auto industry does. You are not just a cartoonist, but your experience and history from vintage racing with your dad. I think you just have the coolest history. I'd like you to go a little into how you got into cartooning and what you're up to.
Yeah, well, I've drawn all my life. Grew up with a talent for art, and I did that with school newspapers in high school, and then college at Princeton University, which really had a robust media program with newspapers and radio. So I came into the journalism world as a cartoonist, and it's a neat job because you get to write and to draw, and every day on the latest topics. So I've always been a topical cartoonist and editorial cartoonist in the industry, and I from day to day I address anything from sports headlines to political headlines to automotive headlines. So there's always something to write about. And then, as you say, Lauren, my father was a founder of SBRA, which is one of the premier amateur racing organizations in the United States. And so I grew up at the racetrack, and I raced Porsches with my father. My father was one of the premier collectors of 1960 race cars. So I raced a Porsche 906 and a Porsche 908 for years. Two of the most famous Porsche marks out there. My father raced a Porsche 907, which was the first Porsche to ever win a 24-hour race at Daytona in 1968. So we had some pretty competitive cars when I was getting into racing, and then when my father passed, we got a new generation of Paynes coming up now. But my sons Henry and Sam, and we all own now. The Porsches have kind of uh, gone into storage. They became collectors' cars, like everything from the 1960s, like your Mustangs, Lauren. They've become so valuable they're not worth racing anymore. And so we got into the SCCA S2000 class, very competitive class, aluminum monocoque cars. They're half the horsepower of a Porsche 908, but the chassis are twice as stiff, so they're just as quick. Yeah, 2-liter spec Ford engines, and I race with my two sons in the SCCA S2 class with Lola race cars.
Well, SVRA is still around. It's Sports Car Vintage Racing Association. They race around the country. I've been running with them since '86. Don't do the math. I think it's about the time your dad started SBRA, somewhere in that era.
Started in 1979. Yeah,
Oh,
I started racing in 1992. Yeah.
I did not realize that. I've been doing this a long time. It was because for me, I was running SCCA, which is a Sports Car Club of America, and my husband was showing cars. And so the only happy medium was vintage racing. The Shelby's mixed with racing, and it worked out. And you can race in a Mustang, in a Mini Cooper, in an MG. I mean, there's a million cars, and you can pick up race cars at reasonable prices. But SCCA is also like that. Sports Car Club of America does everything from autocrossing, which is where I started, all the way up to pro racing, which is Trans Am. My husband runs in the Trans Am series, and so it's kind of neat to see all this racing. But because you love power like we all do, I was shocked to hear that you own a Tesla. I would love to hear your experience with it and what made you decide to buy a Tesla.
Well, this industry is a very mature industry. The brands have been around now for decades, and I thought it was fascinating at the beginning of the 21st century that you had a company led by this mercurial CEO, really the Henry Ford of his time, come in and create a new car company, Tesla. And not only did he create a new car company, and make a couple compelling cars in the case of the Model X and the Model S, but he's very reverential to Henry Ford, right? I mean, he names his cars model whatever, just like the Model T, the Model A. He's very aware of the auto industry history, and he wants to be the Henry Ford of the 21st century, and he's this mercurial entrepreneur, very much like Ford. I mean, Ford had all kinds of grand designs about manufacturing. He got involved in media, and here's Musk, getting involved in in public policy, buying Twitter. I mean, I think there's a lot of parallels between these men. It's fascinating, I think, to have entrepreneurs like a Henry Ford or a Donald Trump or a Elon Musk in the public conversation. They're such different individuals. So when Musk came out in 2016 and introduced the Model 3, which was going to be their volume car aimed at the $40,000 market segment, I thought, I want to be on board with this journey. And so I signed up. Elon Musk went on stage in 2016, sight unseen. He didn't even have a concept car, right? He just said, here, 2016, sign up and buy my car. And I was one of those 250,000 people that went online and bought my car and bought the Model 3 based on my experience with the Model S, which is a terrific electric vehicle. Bought the Model 3, and 2 years later, 18 months later, in 2018, I got delivery on a Model 3, and it has been, I've owned 3 now, and it's the most fascinating car I've ever owned.
Wow, that's fascinating, Henry, and I like your acknowledgement and pointing out the fact that there is this kind of parallel between Elon Musk and Henry Ford. I agree, and I think it's fascinating. And you love him or hate him, and I think I've done both and everything in between over the last 10 years. But he's certainly an impressive individual and massively influential. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with The Drive with Lauren and Carl right after this break, and we're going to continue talking to Henry. He's got lots of great stories to tell. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Drive with Lauren and Carl, and we've got a great guest, Henry Payne, and this segment is brought to you by Karl Brauer Cars. That's my YouTube channel, if it sounds familiar, and I'm putting up a couple videos every week, including things like the RAV4 or the Lamborghini Reventon. They're both on there, and you can see them all. All right, you are back with The Drive with Lauren and Carl, and we are having a great conversation with Henry Payne, writer for the Detroit News and vintage racer and cartoonist and just talented all over the place. And speaking of highly talented, we were just talking about Elon Musk and, whether you love him or hate him and the extent to which a lot of people's opinions, myself included, has changed over the years. And I'll just real quick say what got me about him originally that annoyed me so much was the arrogance that he came in with, like, we got to modernize this American car industry. And I'm going to do it with this new electric car, and it's going to be a roadster, and it's going to, cost like 50 grand, and it's go like 300 miles and could go 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. And then a couple of months later, well, okay, it's going to cost 60 grand. It's going to be 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. It's going to go 280 miles. A couple of months later, okay, oh, and it'll be out like in 6 months. Oh no, okay, well, it's going to cost 70 grand, and it's do 0 to 60 in 3, and and by the third time or fourth time that everything got slower, more expensive, shorter range, and later delayed, I was like, this guy's a huckster. I can't believe anyone listens to this guy.
The Pied
And I
Piper.
basically had that opinion until finally he got profitable. It only took him about 15 years. But you know, it's amazing that he got profitable. He had a unique situation. Among other things, he was the only one with a interesting or premium or kind of cool looking electric car. You had this Leaf that was out there, and at some point you had a Bolt, or sorry, a Volt. No, it was the Bolt. Yeah, then the Volt.
They're both
So
blah. Yeah.
they're both blah. But yeah, so you had these boring electric cars, and then you had these cool, luxurious, fast Teslas for like 15 years. So he had a 15-year runway with no competition, right, Henry? And it took them about that long to become profitable. And all these new people like the Rivians and the Lucids and all, it's like, yeah, you will never have that situation again. You're not going to get a 15-year no competition runway like Elon had. So congrats to him. He figured it out. But it's hard to produce cars. So Henry, tell us, in your opinion, the challenge of producing cars, electric cars for the US market and things like China. We talked about how China is always doing so great in electric cars. We're struggling. What's going on there?
Well, I think while Musk was missing his targets, as you say, on the Roadster, Carl, he was also producing the Tesla Model Y, which became the third best-selling non-pickup in the United States in 2024. He sold 400,000 of those vehicles, and I think that the only two cars that outsold it were the Honda CR-V and the Toyota RAV4, and I think that tells you how compelling the product is. And I think what's going on there, I think is important for any mature industry, is it's good to have a disruptor. It's good to have a Donald Trump come into Washington, D.C. and disrupt government. It's good to have Elon Musk come into the automotive industry and disrupt it and say, why are we selling cars through dealers instead of through stores like Apple sells iPhones? Why aren't we updating cars constantly, like phones, and making them better on the road? And in the case of the charging network, which I think is a secret sauce, why aren't companies integrating charging with their vehicles so that you do away with range anxiety? So I think it's wonderful to have somebody who's come in the industry and looked at it with fresh eyes. And I think that's really been his success, and I've experienced that with the Tesla Model 3. It continues to be unlike any other car that I've owned. I own a Model 3 Performance, and it gets better every day. It can drive itself now everywhere. It's a little nerve-wracking, but because of software updates, it can drive itself everywhere. But I think that one Musk a lot of um, a lot of fans on the left, is that he saw this EV maker come in, saw him make EVs successful, and they said, aha, here is our global warming priest. Here is the guy that shows that electric cars are the future. And then Elon Musk said, no, wait a minute. I think that competition is good. I think the consumer ought to be able to buy anything they want. And when the government shut down his company during COVID in California, I think he had an epiphany and realized the danger of government getting involved with manufacturing, government dictating to manufacturers what they had to buy. And I think that was a real epiphany. And he became involved in free speech. He bought Twitter. He became involved in the Trump administration in streamlining government. And all of a sudden, the left hated it. And so, I really admire his entrepreneurial skills. And I think he also shows that, that you can make a compelling car, but it's not for everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
what you really want in the consumer market is choice.
Thanks so much, Henry, for your insight. We do appreciate you joining us today. If you'd like to rewatch this, you can see it on our YouTube channel, The Drive with Lauren and Karl, or look at The Drive Car Show. You've been listening to The Drive, your trusted source for the latest car news, expert reviews, and real insight in the automotive industry. Don't forget to subscribe and leave your comments on our YouTube channel. And until next time, stay safe, enjoy the ride, and we'll see you right back here next week on The Drive. Thank you, Henry Payne.
You've been listening to The Drive, your trusted source for the latest car news, expert reviews, and real insights into the automotive world. Thanks for riding along with us today. You can check out the entire archive of every episode on our YouTube channel, The Drive with Lauren and Karl. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and join the conversation by leaving your comments. We love hearing from you. Until next time, stay safe, enjoy the ride, and we'll see you right back here on The Drive.